My name is Abe Gray, and I'm the curator of Whakamana Cannabis Museum, New Zealand's first and only cannabis museum. Been around for almost 3 years, and it just kind of evolved out of a legalization activism group that we had on the campus at the university here, the University of Otago in Dunedin. We smoke in public as an act of protest in the police station and weekly on the university campus, and so much information and memorabilia had been accumulated that we started a museum. And now that the legalization movement has gained so much traction overseas, and the argument has really been won in many American states, there's a lot of interest, and we're here to educate the public and provide an archive of all the information about cannabis and the legal issues surrounding it. Because when history is written, we believe that we'll be vindicated as having been right all along. So this is our favorite t-shirt that we sell. This is a parody of the University of Otago crest, and I'm particularly fond of our Latin motto, Cannabis Maximus. This is where we have our permanent displays. We have some pipes for sale. This trumpet has been made into a pipe because it didn't function as a trumpet anymore. We've got some packaging here from Colorado from a legal cannabis store, and there's, hundreds and hundreds there, and they all have their own unique packaging, of which we have many. We've also been involved in the production of a film, Drug Laud. This is the first feature-length documentary about cannabis legalization in New Zealand, and we feature in there heavily. It's a great movie. You can download it for $4.20. Got some other merchandise here, plus hemp products. We're really into hemp, and of course the stalk of the cannabis plant, can be broken down into these fibers that you then can spin and weave into rope and cloth. This is our library, which we're very proud of. Over 100 books all about cannabis. Some of them out of print, not really available, and some of them very rare, New Zealand specific ones. Some of them even banned in certain countries. So we're happy to be able to provide a safe place to explore those type of ideas. This is an interesting contraption we call the funiculator, and this was designed to deliver a bottle of beer, a cone of cannabis, and a balloon of nitrous oxide simultaneously through this fire hose type assembly. Modern engineering marvel, really. This is our exhibition space. So we have different exhibits that change. We reconfigure these sort of room dividers to make different surfaces, and then, we display objects and information about various aspects of the cannabis issue. This current exhibit is about Bitcoin and the Silk Road, which are dark web portals that people use to purchase cannabis online, sort of circumventing some of the problems that come with the illegal black market in many countries. So this explains all the technology, and there's actually a interactive demonstration booth where you can view the dark web yourself for information purposes only.
With Kiwis being notoriously laid-back people, why is it that cannabis is so frowned upon so much here in New Zealand compared to other political issues?
Well, it's interesting because New Zealand has the highest per capita use rate of cannabis of any Western country. So we have the most stoners per population of any, OECD country. But maybe because of that, it's a wedge issue. So whereas a lot of countries like, say, the UK, a moral, social issue that would be used during an election might be, say, immigration or something like that. And in the United States, it would be gay marriage or race, potentially. But in New Zealand, we don't have the same population demographics that allow that to be a polarizing issue. But because we have so many cannabis users, that's our sort of stand-in for those moral majority kind of culture war politics. The cannabis issue is really polarizing, and it's been used to sort of beat up on cannabis users as hippies or, lowlifes, dropouts. but probably about 20% of New Zealand uses cannabis fairly regularly. And that would include, professionals, doctors, lawyers, celebrities. But because it's been so abused and the image of it, excuse me, is so, has been so negative, so much negative propaganda in the media, most of the users are afraid to speak out, especially the professional ones with something to lose. So it's kind of a downward spiral of no one telling the truth, and then more and more propaganda coming out, and no one standing up for themselves, and then, the prohibitionist opposition is allowed to get away with making wild claims about cannabis. So we felt like we had to stand up and do the issue justice, because most of the major political parties, even our Green Party, who, has policies supportive of the issue, they're afraid to go out and talk about it in public, talk about it in front of the media, because they don't want to be tarnished as, some stoner. But, we're quite obviously stoners, so we're happy to be tarnished in that way, and we want to tell the truth and stand up for ourselves and stand up for all the other 20% of New Zealand who is, using it non-problematically. Obviously, there's people who shouldn't use it, people who abuse it, and, their lives could be better if they didn't use it, and those people shouldn't. But there's a lot of people who are getting a benefit out of it, and a lot of people who are, they might just be using it recreationally, but they're not hurting anyone, and they're using it responsibly, just like many people use alcohol. So yeah, we just think there should be equivalency between the cannabis and alcohol issue, and responsible adults should be free to use. So we want to put the word out there and present it in a classy and interactive way, that will really engage people, and not the same old sort of arguments. Yeah.
Do you feel that legalizing cannabis will affect New Zealand as a country?
Legalizing cannabis in New Zealand would be great, because 20% of New Zealand would no longer feel persecuted by the law. They'd have a lot more respect for authority in terms of the government and police. 10% of our prison population could be let free, because we have about 1,000 prisoners representing one whole New Zealand jail full of people, just for growing and selling. And of course, it has to come from somewhere. And some of these people are real criminals, but they would be in prison for other crimes. It's people who are only there for cannabis, who have, been nice people. Otherwise, they shouldn't be punished in that way, and that would free up a lot of resources. But with so many people smoking it, the economic value of it in New Zealand is huge. Probably, $500 million a year in the retail market, at a conservative estimate. Not to mention all of the tourists, lots of young independent travelers, international backpackers from the US, Europe, Canada, South America. We see them every day here at the Cannabis Museum, and they love to smoke, they love the outdoors, they want to go experience the beauty of nature. And a lot of times, cannabis goes a lot better with that than, say, alcohol or something. So if New Zealand was really able to market itself as a cannabis tourism destination, which it really is in its own right, because it has such a strong cannabis culture, so much of the population using it, all of these, off the beaten track areas where it's a really big part of the local economy or the culture. If that was really promoted to tourists, it would take off huge, just as much as Colorado or Amsterdam, maybe even more. And we're an agricultural economy that exports to the world, our fruit, our dairy. So if we were able to export cannabis produce, there's no reason why New Zealand couldn't go toe-to-toe with the major countries like we do in those other agricultural areas. And it would be worth, billions to the economy, really. New Zealand is looking at the moment for a more environmentally friendly commodity crop that we can grow and export. And here you have it, staring us in the face, not to mention our own domestic tourism-oriented economy, which really fits with all of the new developments that we've seen overseas.
How does the gang culture here affect your movement as a whole?
Well, because it's illegal, you can only get it on the black market, and the only people who, are not really worried about breaking the law is kind of criminals and the gangs. So, some people will secretly grow it or, trade it with their friends, but if you want to sort of buy it in a commercial consumer sense, a lot of it is sold by the gangs, and that exposes people to, criminal elements, criminal types that they wouldn't otherwise associate with. A lot of cannabis users don't want to hang out with gang members, but if they can't get it anywhere else, they will, and that can expose them to, other predatory crimes. People can be offered other types of drugs. They're not really scrupulous people, so sometimes they'll spray things onto it, or they'll substitute it with, different herbs with synthetic chemicals, which is never good. So it's obviously much better to have all that $500 million in trade regulated by professional business people, complying with whatever regulations, and why we would just hand that amount of commercial economy over to criminals is really, it's amazing. That's one of the worst problems of prohibition, is actually allowing the gangs to take all that money and, essentially have a monopoly on that. So if it was made legal, they would no longer be able to do that, and people could buy it safely and know what they were getting, and just like any consumer product.
In comparison with the rest of the world, what with legalizing cannabis picking up so much speed in the States especially, how far do you honestly think New Zealand is from making cannabis legal?
It would seem like it would have to happen soon, but I thought it was going to happen 14 years ago when I first immigrated to New Zealand from the United States. So back in 2000, 2001, New Zealand had the world's first Rastafarian member of parliament. And he was open about the fact that he used cannabis currently, not just had tried it in the past. And he was really intelligent, and it hadn't affected him, and he wasn't like brain dead. He was a member of parliament. He was very respected. And it looked like New Zealand was about to legalize cannabis, and that's the reason why I immigrated, because I wanted to come to this, beautiful island of pure nature that was going to have legal cannabis. But there was an election, and a centrist Christian party sort of gained more power than the Greens, who had this Rastafarian guy, and cannabis was taken off the table. And it was really used as a beat-up, like I described before, and the Greens kind of even backed away from it then. And for the last 14 years, New Zealand has gotten farther and farther away from legalization than it was when I originally got here. Now, thankfully, all of this overseas evidence is building up, and it's pretty overwhelming, especially considering the United States is the site of production of most popular media, and everybody's watching movies and shows on the internet and getting their news online, and so all of the government propaganda, channeled through our TV or newspapers is really irrelevant now, and people are getting stuff from California and Oregon and Colorado and Washington, and it's just overwhelming. The truth of, all of the benefits of legalization, and the fact that none of the horror stories that prohibitionists make out ever actually materialize when you do legalize, now that's concrete. So you would hope that that evidence would inform the government's decision, but it hasn't ever in the past. So I'd like to be optimistic, but the older I get, the more cynical I get as well. That being said, we've just found a loophole in our Misuse of Drugs Act that allows people who legally obtain medical cannabis overseas to bring 1 month's supply back into New Zealand with them. So very soon I hope to be traveling to California and buying some legal medical cannabis and bringing it back with me to New Zealand. But hopefully we won't have to do that for years.
Okay, so what's your next step? What are you working on right now, except obviously the big aim at the end of the tunnel? Any smaller projects are you taking on right now?
Well, we'd like to call a national referendum on the issue. where, you know, every registered voter gets a chance to have their say on a question about whether they think medical cannabis should be allowed and recreational decriminalization should be allowed. So hopefully we'll be able to achieve that. We also have a political party in the New Zealand parliamentary system. Very small parties can gain representation, so our legalized cannabis party would have a chance of getting in if we got, you know, just about 100,000 votes. And the 20% of New Zealand that smokes heavily, you know, that represents close to 1 million people. So if just some of them would give us their vote and treat this issue properly, then we could hold the balance of power in Parliament and actually make a change very quickly. And we'll be, you know, contesting this next election next year very strongly, and we're hoping through our activities here to be able to build up a lot of resources and do a lot of fundraising so that we can get, you know, good TV ads, billboards, and really go toe-to-toe with the major political parties and get this issue the coverage it deserves as an election issue.
So for anyone watching out there that wants to get involved, who wants to help out with this movement, whether they're in New Zealand or overseas, how would they go about doing that?
Well, check us out, you know, at the Cannabis Museum. You can send me an email. Our website is cannabis.org.nz. That's for our political party, and you'll find links to the museum there as well as our university club that we operate. So the best thing that people can do is just get in touch with us via email, Facebook, Twitter. You can always make a donation. That helps a lot. And visit New Zealand. You know, tell your friends about the Cannabis Museum. Come visit us in person, see it for yourself. And when you're coming to New Zealand, you know, explain to the tourism authorities it's a beautiful place and you're coming here because you heard about this cool Cannabis Museum, and it's a shame that there's not more cannabis tourism opportunities in New Zealand.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Abe. That was a great interview.